get some time.
I'm certainly open to utilizing Justin. He has an awesome skill set. We've done some of that in the past. We've done less of it in recent weeks. He experienced an injury or so a couple of weeks back that slowed some of that. But certainly in an effort to win this game, I am open to any combination.
On Sunday afternoon in Buffalo, the Bills play host to the Broncos in the AFC wildcard. Buffalo went 8-0 at home in the regular season. The college football playoff semifinals get underway tomorrow at the Orange Bowl in Miami. Penn State squares off with Notre Dame. Then on Friday night in Arlington, Texas at the Cotton Bowl Classic, the Ohio State Buckeyes battle the Texas Longhorns. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Welcome back to College Bowl season. And now it looks like a fan has run onto the field carrying a $5 KFC bowl.
Oh, yeah, looks like the mac and cheese bowl with 5 original recipe nuggets, or the new Nashville hot loaded fry bowl with nuggets, coleslaw, secret recipe fries, pickles, and Nashville hot sauce. Wow, looks yummy from up here.
Boy, everybody wants that bowl as more fans are pouring onto the field. Hey, Bill.
Get the only bowls that matter this season. 5 delicious bowls, just $5 each. Only at KFC. Prices and participation may vary. Supplies last. Taxes, tips, and fees extra.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time. The next time you're out to dinner with friends, you can order the shrimp cocktail for the table. And maybe you'll realize it only comes with 4 shrimp after you've already given away 3, but that one shrimp will be so good. And if you switch and save hundreds, you could get shrimp all the time. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time for shrimp. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on a Wednesday. It is Football Full Circle, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network in Sirius XM Channel 159. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. Together for the next hour on FFC up until 1 p.m. Eastern Time. An important Wednesday in the NFL playoff calendar because for the 12 teams competing in our 6 games on Super Wild Card Weekend, really the first day of practice for everybody on Sunday and after is today. That's some important quarterback injury news we might get within this hour, or at least update the latest information. And Scott, as we kind of predicted yesterday, following the end of the regular season, on a day known as Black Monday, the day after the end of the regular season, there wasn't that many flurries of moves or coaches being fired around the NFL. But on Tuesday, some major moves to discuss, including change in head coaching jobs in Las Vegas, and we have talked about some of the changes around front offices in the NFL as well. Plenty to get to, whether you're the 18 teams that did not qualify for the postseason, now putting plans in place for your franchise's future, or those 14 teams now into the playoffs in the NFL.
Yeah, really is amazing. It's almost like a fork in the road, and usually there's 2 options, right? This one, it's kind of like 3 options. You're at the fork, you're a playoff team, and now you're preparing for the playoffs. You're at the fork, and you're a team that's looking to get the number 1, 2, 3 overall pick, and you got to try to figure out who's in the draft. You take that road. Or there's the third fork in which you're still making changes with the head coaching and GM positions, and you take that road in hopes of getting to the playoffs. So it's kind of like you think the season is over. All right, little breath of fresh air, little pregnant pause here, but not really. All the 32 teams in the NFL all have things to do. I can't say I'm surprised, Ben, with the Raider thing, but it's just like, I always feel bad for coaches who get 1 year, whether it's Pierce, whether it's Mayo with the Patriots. I mean, what did I do to deserve the job that you love me so much? But yet, how did I screw up so badly that you're only giving me 1 year to fix a problem, which clearly in both those cases were problems? No quarterbacks, no offensive players wanting out with the Raiders. I mean, how bad could Antonio Pierce have been that, again, you hired him, you loved him so much last year, but now you hate him so much you're going to get rid of him. Strange.
Especially in the spots, Scott, where it wasn't Antonio Pierce taking over for Super Bowl contending probable Las Vegas, a team that had a win total at 6.5 or even in spots 5 and a hook entering 2024 because of the quarterback concern we knew was going to be an issue, whether it was Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell all year long in Sin City, or for Gerard Mayo in New England, the lowest win total all around the National Football League entering 2024 at 4.5. Yes, both coaches went 4-13 this season. There is no doubt that is not success, and neither were all that great in covering numbers to look more competitive or optimistic on the actual playing surface. But I completely agree. And Scott, as we focus on Sin City and the Las Vegas Raiders' decision yesterday to fire Antonio Pierce after only one full year as the permanent head coach, of course, filled in as the interim coach for the final 9 games in 2023. To me, it's not on the head coach. It's not on the front office. It's not on the players or the staff. Oftentimes, Scott, when you find a franchise around the National Football League that continuously struggles in large part year over year, decade over decade, there is one constant you look at. That's the owner or the ownership group. Al Davis gave the keys to this organization to his son, Mark, who has driven it into a wall. The Raiders, who have had 2 winning seasons and 2 playoff appearances, by the way, in the same years, in the last 22 seasons, are now going to be looking for their 5th head coach in as many seasons after the dismissal of Antonio Pierce after only 1 full year. The Raiders have made the move, Scott. I can say it's not overly surprising. They're looking for a new head coach. It did not seem to be a successful season even for Pierce, considered a player's coach with some of the tumult we saw this year for this Raiders organization. But it was surprising waiting until Tuesday, sending Antonio Pierce out there on a Monday afternoon to do a postpartum on your season that just came to a close, and to be asked about his head coaching status and to say, until I hear otherwise, I'm the coach of Las Vegas, to only be fired about 24 hours later.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, at least the Patriots did it that day, as awkward as that was, but at least it was, all right, you have to have the end of the game press conference, but it wasn't much more than that before they let Gerard Mayo know, okay, we're not bringing you back. But, what do you tell me? That they didn't know come Sunday or Monday? They actually had to sit down Monday night and discuss it amongst themselves to figure out that they weren't going to bring Pierce back? Really? I mean, I said this the other day, Ben. I wouldn't have had these guys coach the last day of the regular season. I would have fired them before the last game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Scott, we did see 3 of the now 6 head coaching vacancies around the NFL make that move during the middle of the regular season to have an interim head coach in place, which is exactly what the Raiders did a year ago in 2023, firing Josh McDaniels about a year and a half into his tenure in Sin City by Halloween, so that Antonio Pierce took over as the interim head man. Actually performed admirably in the 9 games that he was the interim head coach, leading the Raiders to 5 wins in 7 covers in that 9-game stretch, to promote him as the permanent head coach because it seemed as though he had the pulse of the locker room in the full buy-in from his roster, to only just a year later be ousted after a 4-13 campaign. Scott, we see this often. Bad organizations have bad ownership. We saw Matt Eberflus go out there after the Turkey Day fiasco at the end against Detroit on Friday and have a press conference before the Bears fired him later that afternoon. That's unthinkable. The Raiders did the same, casting out now a former head coach to meet with the media to recap a loss or a lost season, to only be canned less than 24 hours after. And I'm not just saying it was that move that proves the Raiders are a badly run organization. It is everything we have seen in the last 5 years, perhaps the better part of the last 2 decades. Again, in the last 22 seasons, the Raiders have had a winning record above 500. Twice they have made the postseason. Only twice those 2 things, winning seasons and playoff bids, have happened in each of the same 2 years. Scott, the Raiders are a staple franchise in the lore and the history of the NFL, dating back to the AFL. The Autumn Wind is a Raider. They are anything but the last 2 decades, whether in Oakland or now Las Vegas.
Yeah, and if you look at that job, I know it's the Tom Brady thing. You think you're going to get Mike Vrabel, although the Patriot fans are saying the same thing there. But ultimately, really, would you want to go to the Raiders? I mean, they really don't have a quarterback unless you believe in Aiden O'Connell, which I don't think anyone realistically does. They're sitting there with the number 6th overall pick, so they have a lot of stuff a lot of teams to move ahead of if they were going to get one of the top 2 spots that theoretically are going to have your 2 quarterbacks, Ward and Sanders, go, right? And not to mention that those 2 teams in the top 2 spots really don't look like in a position they wouldn't be trading out of there since they need quarterbacks. So it's like, what's the attraction with the Raiders outside of being in Las Vegas? And at this point, that's gone. Offense stinks. Defense stinks. I mean, there's not a whole lot there. Tom Brady's going to be able to bring some, a Mike Vrabel. What promises are you going to give Mike Vrabel? We'll say if it's him, where we're going to change things around. Who's the big-time free agent quarterback? At least last year there was Kirk Cousins. Sam Darnold? It would be just like the Raiders, I suppose, to give Sam Darnold, a 4 or 5 year, 3-year guaranteed contract. But I think we saw the real Sam Darnold Sunday night. I just don't think he's that good. I really don't. But this is a stumbling, bumbling organization, so they might.
Scott, we'll talk more about Vegas on the other side. We almost excused the Raiders from squandering the opportunity to draft first overall when they desperately needed a quarterback because they won 2 games at the end of the year they shouldn't have, but at least they were booked as a slight favorite in both. More on Sin City and FFC next.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid, and we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin.
He just gives that vibe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Mark Zuckerberg is moving Meta's platform security and content oversight team out of California and shifting staff who review posts to Texas in a bid to combat concerns about liberal bias and over-censorship at his social media empire. With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. The CEO of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Threads parent company said on Tuesday that the moves would help return Meta to its, quote, roots about free expression and giving people a voice on our platforms. Elon Musk shut X's headquarters in San Francisco last fall in favor of operating the company out of Bastrop, Texas. A national day of observance has been declared in recognition of the life and death of former President Jimmy Carter. The Postal Service will suspend regular mail deliveries, retail services, and administrative office activity on Thursday. All Postal Service facilities are included in the National Day of Observance. Regular operations will resume on Friday, January 10th. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Hey, you've definitely had a busy month. Finding gifts, sending cards, hosting family. Well, now it's time to treat yourself at Macy's After Christmas Sale. Come and find great deals on something just for you. Like 25% off New Year's party looks from DKNY, Adriana Papel, and more. So enjoy the week and get yourself the gifts you really wanted before these limited time deals are over. At Macy's After Christmas Sale. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
This holiday season, Capital One reminds you to give yourself the gift of 1.5% cash back with the Capital One Quicksilver Card.
Can I earn 1.5% cash back on birds?
Birds?
What if you sent your true love 2 turtle doves plus a partridge in a pear tree?
Sure, but why would anyone want that?
The song was very convincing.
Earn 1.5% cash back on all your holiday purchases with the Capital One Quicksilver Card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
There's something you should know and always remember.
SportsGrid does not increase luck.
We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck,
go find a horseshoe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Scott, it's almost like the NFL's insiders know when we are starting our show on Football Full Circle because within the last few minutes, this report from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero tying perfectly into our discussion around the Las Vegas Raiders now looking for a new head coach after firing Antonio Pierce yesterday. Multiple NFL teams, says Pelissero, have inquired about whether legendary coach Bill Belichick would reconsider his move to college football, including the Raiders, whose new minority owner, Tom Brady, spoke recently with his old coach per league sources. Would that explain the timeline? Waiting an additional day to dismiss Antonio Pierce? Would Bill Belichick, after agreeing to become North Carolina's new head coach and already out on the recruiting trail, actually consider a move back to the National Football League? A lot, Scott, to dissect out of this report that, again, just kind of hit the wire on social media, on Twitter in the last 10, 15 minutes.
Wow. This is amazing. Now, listen, this doesn't mean Belichick reached out to them. It means they reach out to Belichick, right, and anybody can reach out to anybody. That's first and foremost, right? But I will say, when we heard the news about him going to college, we all thought it was kind of weird anyway. This guy who's 75 years old is going to be playing the young man's game, college and NIL and all. It didn't make any sense, right? But really, from the standpoint, I didn't understand. To me, that meant that he and his agent specifically, checked all doors. We knew who might be firing their head coaches, right? You don't have to think a genius. We had 3 that were open. You knew the Giants were considering. You knew the Raiders were considering. Heck, you knew the Patriots were considering, and a couple of others, Jacksonville as well. So his agent, Ben, didn't go to those teams and say, listen, Bill, had the year off. He wants to coach again. He wants to coach in the NFL. Is there any interest? You don't have to tell me that you're going to fire a guy, but if you were at the end of the year, would you be interested in Bill? I mean, you tell me they didn't do that, the Belichick side? And if they did these teams lie to them? I mean, why would Tom Brady now, right? I mean, wouldn't you have done this a month ago and gone to Belichick and said, hey, Bill, you know what? If we make a move, would you be interested in coming out here? Could you deal with me being your boss now for the first time?
Sure.
Or some of these other teams, right? I mean, very, very weird. I mean, we've all been speculating about where he was going to end up, and he would have the pick of the litter after being turned down by the Falcons. It just seems it doesn't make any sense why these teams, Ben, wouldn't have gone to him before now, and at least poked the tires a little bit and just saw if he was interested in coming to their organization.
And Scott, I think it's easy to be skeptical, right, of this report, even from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, and say, just a little drama, just a little bit to get some engagement or some social media headlines or the talking heads to have a conversation as we're still previewing a week in the NFL before the postseason truly begins. But I would offer why, right? Why do all of this now? If there is smoke, might there actually be a story behind this? Because, again, Scott, there's not a ton of reason for this to be the case. Has North Carolina done its due diligence to truly get the honest answer out of Bill Belichick that he was fully set on college? Based on the introductory press conference, it certainly seemed as such. And to your point, wouldn't Belichick and his people, more closely tied into NFL circles than anything in the college realm, have inquired about the status of even potential job openings and the viability of Bill Belichick actually being a candidate at the top of a very short list for any of them? Not just a guy to get an interview before he were to make a move to Chapel Hill, but truly to be a head coaching candidate. Again, all of this is rather shocking. And again, I think it does bear repeating, Scott. There was something on the day that Bill Belichick was introduced as UNC's next head football coach in Chapel Hill that caught a lot of people off guard. His contract and a certain clause in the contract regarding a buyout if he were to leave by June 1st. And it was the end of 2024, so calendars were a little bit up in the air, and you're thinking about the 2024 college football season about to expire, but about to be 2025, where college football games are still about to be played. I say all that, Scott, for date math in this case, because it was a clause that if Bill Belichick were to exit his North Carolina job prior to June 1st, 2025, he would owe UNC $10 million. If he were to exit after June 1st, 2025, it would only be $1 million that Belichick and or his people would have to pay back to the Tar Heels. And then everybody was like, June 1st, 2025. What is that, next summer after his first season? No, that was before his first year potentially being the head football coach in Chapel Hill. Again, Scott, it was alarming when we all saw the contract that was readily available. Is that another reason this could potentially be happening?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read the contract. There was also some buzz, though, Ben, that supposedly once Belichick left, that his son was going to be the head coach in North Carolina. Was there a stipulation? I would think that he would have to be there at least a year, or if not 2 or 3, before he would be able to hand it over to his son. But if they weren't smart enough to put that in there, then it would be like, okay, I'll pay you $10 million, but my son has the head coaching job. And then maybe that was the whole thing. The whole kit and caboodle, that was the whole goal after all. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It just, there's got to be more to this story. There just has to be. Like we talked here, you can't possibly, if you want to get back into the NFL, you can't possibly not have your agent poke the tires. You just, that would be beyond stupid. So I don't get why these teams all of a sudden, and it's not just the Raiders, apparently, it's few teams. So, the teams that have head coaching jobs, it's got to be the Bears. I mean, if they're willing to talk to Mike McCarthy, I guess they'd be willing to talk to Belichick. I doubt it's the Jets, to tell you the truth, but, the Saints, would he follow Sean Payton's, thing down there? I mean, it just seems weird that they wouldn't have done this beforehand, and if that's the case, then, he would have been, skipping the North Carolina thing. Unless, like you said, they left enough loopholes in that thing where he gets to have his son keep that job, and he gets to get back into the NFL.
Yeah, it's so much to continue to discuss, Scott, on the other side of the break. This might be for nothing, right? This could be just a speculatory report, but it is worth the conversation in every single angle. Up next, live right here on SportsGrid Radio on Football Full Circle.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1984, the AFC Championship at the LA Memorial Coliseum. The Raiders beat the Seattle Seahawks 30-14. In the NFC Championship at RFK Stadium, Washington beats the San Francisco 49ers 24-21. The Raiders would go on to crush Washington in the Super Bowl 38-9. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
University College of London scientists have created the world's thinnest spaghetti. And by thin, this electro-spun nanofiber pasta makes your grandfather's angel hair look like a redwood tree trunk. At 372 nanometers, that's 14,000 billionths of an inch thick. It can only be seen with an electron microscope. Made of safe edible starch for medical drug delivery and porous bandages that let moisture in and keep bacteria out. Cooks up for dinner in just a second. However, only one problem.
I can't see it.
Follow me at Chicapalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
Think about what David Shaw did at Stanford. We're going to run it. Great job in the Pac-12. Teams are putting up 70 plus. Jared got bing, bing, bing. And then you're going to hire him after another gutless head coach in Dennis Allen. Get real. What's his name? Mickey? Mickey, wake up, Mickey Loomis. Get your head out of your ass.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge.
Anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you.
If you got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC. Again, Scott, the big report that just came down within the last 20 minutes or so from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero. Multiple NFL teams have inquired about whether legendary coach Bill Belichick, currently North Carolina football's head coach in the college ranks, would reconsider his move to CFB, including the Raiders, whose new minority owner, Tom Brady, spoke recently with his old coach per league sources. Again, Scott, This is a very interesting development. And I think one of the things that should be asked is why? Why does this need to be reported? Yes, there are 6 head coaching vacancies. The Raiders, the latest to open up. But Belichick probably had an idea of what jobs might be available this offseason and if he was a legitimate candidate to fill any of those vacancies. So then if you're Bills' side, why put this out there? To garner more attention for the National Football League if you needed that? Because if it's just to garner some attention, it's a bad look on Belichick and all that he is trying to truly establish at the collegiate ranks right now in Chapel Hill. There is a lot to dissect from this conversation, Scott, that is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And as we were discussing in the break, I mean, this can't help him recruiting-wise. I mean, every head coach out there, recruiting kids that, Belichick is going after, they're all saying the same thing, right? The guy's 70-plus years old. You go to North Carolina, he's going to be a head coach there for a year, maybe 2. You come to my school, I'm going to be here for 4 years, blah, 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 blah. So that's already set in stone. Now you throw these rumors. Good luck trying to recruit a kid to North Carolina if you're going to, hook them on, come play for Bill Belichick. So, well, let's take it to the letter of the law, right? Multiple teams, right? So we know there's 6 opportunities out there. We know it's not the Jets. The wars between him and the Jets. The Jets are not going after Bill Belichick, all right? So now you're down to 5. We know the Raiders, okay? So now you really only need one more. Let's just say the one more is the Chicago Bears, man, because they've already made inclinations. They want to talk to Mike McCarthy, who the Cowboys apparently said, no, you can't. Now they're talking to 73-year-old, name escaped me, the Jets former Seattle head coach, Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll, yeah.
So, yeah, brain freeze there. So there are your 2. So if the Bears are willing to talk to Mike McCarthy and Pete Carroll, then maybe they'd say, okay, let's throw a little flyer out there for Bill Belichick. And now all of a sudden, multiple teams really are just 2 teams. And both of them kind of make sense from what we've seen from them. If that's it, then it's no big deal. But if it is, the Saints and it is the Jacksonville Jaguars as well, then there's a little bit more meat to this story than just, Tom Brady saying, yeah, I'll talk to Belichick, see if he wants to come here. And the Bears obviously want to talk to everybody at this point.
Right. And Scott, I think it's a fair point. Why the report out there? Who does it benefit? The NFL teams, Bill Belichick personally, North Carolina football? The answer to all of that would seemingly be no. So what is the realistic possibility of this happening if the report is out there? Which of the 6 current head coaching vacancies, could be 7 next week, depending on what the Cowboys do with Mike McCarthy, who, by the way, denied the Bears' permission request to speak with McCarthy about their head coaching vacancy yesterday. What exactly makes the most sense? There was some rumors that he would be interested in Jacksonville, already has kind of a relationship with Trent Baalke. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Don't think it would be the Jets again by any means. Would he want to be employed in some form or fashion by his former quarterback in Tom Brady? That seems to be a weird relationship change from what they have normally had. And Scott, as we all well know, that relationship really soured toward the end of Brady's tenure in New England. And certainly for Belichick, you can do as many Comedy Central roasts as you would like to try to tell us otherwise. It's a very different thing when you would be in the inner workings once again with Brady the boss as a minority owner of the Raiders organization and Belichick the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. He would be the boss. Would Bill Belichick really be able to deal with that? I mean, boy, they'd have to write some things down. Even Mike Vrabel, though, same thing. I mean, colleague of Brady. He would have to accept the fact that Brady is your boss. He's your owner. I don't know how much say Brady's going to have in the organization, how much hands-on he's really going to be there versus just take his 10% and make the profits. But for Belichick especially, though, that would be kind of weird, right? I mean, he'd have to really want to get back into the NFL, I think, to accept that.
Yeah, and then there's the North Carolina angle of it all as well. I did want to see, Scott, because for a while, the FanDuel Sportsbook, and it still does, had an early season win total for UNC in 2025. It remains up at 7.5, and the over has the juice with the idea of Bill Belichick as UNC's head coach. More on Football Full Circle next.
The
The Winning Edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. The Lions will rest up for a couple of days and then focus their attention on the second round of the playoffs. They'll take on the lowest remaining seed in the NFC once this weekend's wild card round is done. Detroit beat Minnesota to close out the regular season and capture the top seed in the NFC and the division title. Quarterback Jared Goff.
It's what we talked about when we first got here. Certainly when I first got here was what the opportunity you dream about is being able to win division championships in the NFC North and then ultimately win Super Bowls, and that's what's next for us. I think, this is fun and exciting, and we obviously wanted it really bad. We're going to enjoy the heck out of it, but it's step one.
In overtime last night, the Red Wings beat the Senators 3-2. Detroit rallied back from a 2-1 deficit after the second. Patrick Kane scored the overtime winner, 2:21 into the extra session on the power play. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5-amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 113 through 115. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Joe Montana here. In my football days, I knew the importance of a strong defense. Now I'm sharing how you can help defend your health against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease. Are you 50 or older like me? The CDC now recommends vaccination against pneumococcal disease. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at increased risk and over 6 times greater risk of hospitalization with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50. Schedule your appointment today at vaxassist.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
You're listening to SportsGrid.
Spreading the winning edge far and wide.
Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere.
Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, it is Football Full Circle. So, after the report from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero that multiple NFL teams have reached out to Bill Belichick and or his representation to see if he would reconsider his move to UNC, we talk about how realistic this would actually be for Belichick before he even coached a game in Chapel Hill to head to the NFL. Not just the destination, Scott, and the 6 head coaching vacancies currently around the NFL and what might be most likely for Belichick as a new head coach of that franchise, but of course what would be the aftermath for North Carolina. As we shared, the intriguing buyout in the contract that included a date June 1st, 2025, before a single game Belichick would even coach at UNC. That's June 1st in just a couple of months this summer before the 2025 college football season even gets close to beginning. $10 million prior to June 1st, $1 million buyout after June 1st. An NFL team is certainly good for $10 million to make sure they get Belichick right away. On top of that, though, the additional wrinkle of the staff he was starting to assemble. Because when it seemed like it was an Onion article or a joke of a headline that Belichick was even considering a move to North Carolina in the first place, it came out that he had some organizational Bible that he's bemoaned and said, no, that's not actually the case. And he did not verify that fact during his opening press conference. But what is true is who he wanted on his staff, including his son, Steve Belichick, who worked under him in New England, and this past year was the defensive coordinator for Washington, that being the Huskies in the Big Ten. Steve Belichick officially now has been hired as UNC's defensive coordinator. The two Belichick's father and son out on the road this week, Scott, already recruiting. It was very clear that Bill wanted a succession plan in place for when his days were done in UNC to try to set his son up to become the head coach of a power conference football program. Now that Steve Belichick is there, could that be a part of what we are seeing here in these reports?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I would think there would be something in writing that would say Belichick would have to be the head coach for at least a year, if not two, before we're ready to play the game of handing it to your son. I mean, you would think that would be the case. But if they weren't smart enough to put that in there, and and Belichick says, well, I was head coach for a month, and so here you go. My son's now going to be the head coach. I'm going to go coach the Raiders or the Jaguars or the Saints or whoever. But I have the one person I don't have any sympathy if this actually comes to fruition would be North Carolina. Because the moment, Ben, that the buyout clause would come up, right? If I'm North Carolina and Bill, you're saying you want an out clause? Well, wait a minute now. You just spent 3 hours convincing me that at 73, 74, whatever he is, years old, that you're going to be here for a while and you really do want this job. Now you're negotiating an out clause before the first year? I mean, so if North Carolina was still dumb enough to hire this guy under those circumstances, then I have just zero sympathy for North Carolina. Kids, yes, and everyone else involved, the coaches, the assistant coaches, would they get to keep their job? I mean, no NFL team bet is going to wait until June 1st to hire a head coach. So this has got to get done over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think. So would all those assistant coaches, would they be able to keep their jobs? All those commitments, all those promises that Belichick has made? Because he's been asked by everybody, right? And anyone with a brain is saying, why at 70 plus years old are you going back to college? So he's got to go back on all that.
Right.
Boy, this would really, you brought it up. Great point. He left the Jets after literally a day or two. So he's more than capable of leaving North Carolina after a month or so. But man, this would make him look bad. It really would.
I mean, I guess UNC would get $10 million, but that would be one of the great laughing stocks in a short amount of time that you would ever see in potentially promoting an unqualified guy in Steve Belichick to become the next head coach. Not that Belichick doesn't have the experience. It was rather successful in his only year in college football coaching in Seattle under Jed Fish. But what a tumultuous time that would be for UNC. But again, the date of June 1st, 2025, peculiar from the NFL angle, because it didn't need to be June 1st for the head coaching carousel in the NFL. Could have been February 1st. And it didn't need to be June 1st before a game was actually played for UNC with Belichick as the coach. Again, Scott, I remain skeptical, but I was also skeptical that he would actually end up going to Chapel Hill. Yeah. I remain skeptical he actually leaves North Carolina to become an NFL head coach anywhere, not just because of the logistical challenges, but also one of the reasons he went to North Carolina in the first place and didn't have a job last year. I'm not sure how many NFL organizations want Bill Belichick as their head coach, but this makes it even more fascinating because why now would this story be reported? Why not back in November? Why not back in even early December? Why now? Who benefits? I still say nobody. And again, it's a fascinating story nonetheless.
Yeah. How about the NIL deals that supposedly they've been working on, right? You got your local car dealer that's committing $1 million, $2 million. He's not doing that based on, Steven Belichick. They're doing that, right, based on Bill Belichick being there at least a year. So he'd have to go back on all that stuff as well. Again, this is anyone can call up anybody, and maybe that's the story, but I just don't know what angle Belichick's people would have outside of just saying, no, we're not interested. Tom, great, love it. Hope you have a lot of success. Same thing, Chicago, but we're set in stone. And then I don't think this would be a story. So there has to be some on the Belichick side saying, well, maybe, I'm willing to listen.
Yeah.
So weird.
Exactly. Anybody can call anybody. Brady can talk to his old pal Belichick anytime he feels fit in doing so. But why would it be reported? Why would it be said with multiple NFL teams have inquired? A lot. 6 head coaching vacancies at this moment after Antonio Pierce was fired by Las Vegas yesterday afternoon. The Bears, who got rid of Matt Eberflus during the season. The Jets, who fired Robert Saleh early in the year. Of course, the Saints, who fired Dennis Allen early in the season as well. And then the Patriots, almost immediately after their regular season finale. The Jags, who let go of Doug Peterson early on Monday. And the Raiders on Tuesday afternoon. Scott, we have talked already about what the most desirable job is. I will mention, as we kind of touched on just a bit ago, the Bears reached out to the Cowboys to see if they could interview Mike McCarthy to seek permission. The Cowboys yesterday, according to league sources, told the Bears, nah, you can't speak to Mike McCarthy, whose contract comes to a close 6 days from now when that exclusive negotiating window in Dallas comes to an end. And basically, you can think of Mike McCarthy as a free agent in the coaching realm, which made it interesting the Bears would have to even seek permission in the first place, but also doubly makes it interesting, Scott, that Dallas denied the request. We talked about it yesterday. It was starting to seem like the tide was turning, that Mike McCarthy actually might return to the Star in 2025. I think that's even more likely after Dallas saying no to Chicago yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, now this story, you understand who would leak this story out, right? It would be McCarthy's people. Yeah, oh yeah, Bears wanted to talk to Mike, absolutely. Jets called as well. So did the Raiders. You know, you want to be able to put the impetus on the Dallas Cowboys, where I think ultimately if he had his druthers, he'd want to stay there, right? So now it looks like, okay, all of a sudden Mike McCarthy, dead man walking, is now a wanted man. So this story at least makes sense. I do find it funny that Dallas would say no, because the whole year he's been dead man walking. You've had this exclusive ability to re-sign him, you know, from the beginning of last offseason until now. And now all of a sudden you want to show your love for McCarthy with 6 days left in his contract? Again, some of these NFL teams, Ben, they do the strangest, craziest things. You're telling me, honestly, Jerry Jones does not know at this point whether he's bringing Mike McCarthy back? I mean, it just seems bizarre that these decisions wouldn't have been made already.
Yeah, absolutely so, Scott. Before the year got underway with an extension, or why would it be made now after the Cowboys finish with a losing record and miss out on the playoffs, which is always the bare minimum of success in Dallas. Plenty more around the coaching carousel and other offseason moves next on Football Full Circle. Then we'll talk some playoff teams, too.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie.
Just saying.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Mark Zuckerberg is moving Meta's platform security and content oversight team out of California and shifting staff who review posts to Texas in a bid to combat concerns about liberal bias and over-censorship at his social media empire. With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. The CEO of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Threads parent company said on Tuesday that the moves would help return Meta to its, quote, roots about free expression and giving people a voice on our platforms. Elon Musk shut X's headquarters in San Francisco last fall in favor of operating the company out of Bastrop, Texas. A national day of observance has been declared in recognition of the life and death of former President Jimmy Carter. The Postal Service will suspend regular mail deliveries, retail services, and administrative office activity on Thursday. All Postal Service facilities are included in the National Day of Observance. Regular operations will resume on Friday, January 10th. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
What's better than one win? 3 wins. With Straight Savings, you keep your own phone, get one line for only $25 a month with real unlimited data, and get rewarded with a $200 phone credit after 12 months. It's a win-win-win. Head to Walmart or visit straighttalk.com today. Switch to Straight Talk. Less dollars, more sense. Straight Savings Plan enrollment requires compatible unlocked device and new line of service. Bonus device credit requires 12 months of active service. Offer ends if eligibility requirements are no longer met. Taxes and fees apply. For network management practices, see Straight Talk's terms and conditions.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC, all around the National Football League and the carousels that continue to spin both in the coaching ranks and within front offices. Scott, we got some more news around the NFL yesterday in terms of that coaching carousel, coaches that were interviewed in various spots. no big news really outside of that. As we learned, the Bears had their request to interview Mike McCarthy denied by the Dallas Cowboys. Again, it is all incredibly fascinating to me. The Cowboys, it seems like right now, are trending toward bringing Mike McCarthy back because he did not have a contract at the end of the season, entering this season, which basically told all of us, Mike, go out there and prove it. Don't just get to the postseason. Don't just win double-digit games. Heck, even winning the NFC East once again won't be enough to just save your job. Make this playoff successful run we have not seen since 1995, when the Cowboys last won a Lombardi Trophy in the 13 playoff trips from that point. They have not even gone past the divisional round to even play for the NFC Championship. And this Cowboys team, injuries. Dak Prescott out for a majority of the year. But Scott, when he was out there, it was a dismal start to the year for the Cowboys. This Cowboys team finished 7-10. But then we got the reports that Mike McCarthy was starting to have the ear of his locker room. And then kind of the scuttlebutt around how warm his seat was started to quiet down as well. Again, as we stand right now, 6 days from when his contract expires in Dallas, I do think that the Cowboys head coach, Mike McCarthy, returns in 2025, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I tell you, you never say never, Ben. But if he wasn't to return because they didn't want to rehire him, I mean, that would be pretty low, right? I mean, first of all, you could have fired him after last year if you really wanted to, if you knew you weren't going to give him a new contract. They don't do that.
Right.
They let him play out this year, injuries aside, and again, at the end of the season, when it was known they weren't going to make the playoffs and injuries, forget about it. It was going to be a dismal year. You could have fired him then. Could have fired him right after the last game, maybe even before the game. You could have fired him then. You could have fired him like yesterday or today. You're going to make the guy wait. Are you going to really drag this all the way out to the end of his contract? I mean, unless they have they really want to get him, like they're so mad at him. You know what? We're going to let him sit. We're going to let all these other teams maybe hire their new head coach, and then we're going to fire him, 1 week after the season because that's what we can do, and we want to stick it to him. I don't think Jerry Jones is like that, but that's why I say, though, so if they don't rehire him now, they're not doing him any favors by making him hang on here, especially if you're not going to give other teams permission like they did with the Chicago Bears. I mean, crazy.
I wonder, Scott, if that extension comes before next Tuesday. You would almost think it has to, right? When he's still in that exclusive negotiating window and doesn't become a free agent and either could say, F you guys, I'm out if I can go get a new job, or at least report that he is close to getting something and come back with an offer. I don't know. It's just a very fascinating situation playing out for this Dallas Cowboys organization. But when it comes to Jerry Jones in Dallas, it often is. Got some other news around the National Football League yesterday in terms of the coaching carousel, not head coaches, but the 49ers, after a disastrous season, fired offensive coordinator Nick Sorensen. You knew there would be some people that were probably in line to lose their jobs after the Niners finished 6-11, entering the year as the short favorites to win the NFC and play in a Super Bowl once again.
Yeah. Where does this leave Brock Purdy? They got 1 year left on his contract. They can now give him an extension. Are they going to do that? Are they going to let him play out this season? The change in the offensive coordinator. Obviously, they weren't happy with the offense. Despite all the injuries that they had, they still want to, make a change with the coordinator. So it'll be real interesting to see. We've seen San Fran. We've talked about this many times. We've seen them go to a Super Bowl with Jimmy G and then basically kick him out the door, by drafting, Trey Lance and ultimately Brock Purdy. So there's no guarantee that he's going to be there either. What a dismal year it was for San Francisco. I know a lot of people predicted at the beginning of the year. I didn't see it. Maybe they figured some of these injuries were due, but boy, talk about going from the top to the bottom and now making wholesale changes. Little buzz about Kyle Shanahan, maybe being in a little bit of trouble as well. I was reading, last week, 2 weeks ago. So that San Fran team is really in a position of transition right now. Do you really make the commitment to Brock Purdy? Have you seen enough of him to make sure that you're going to give him, listen, the going rate, Ben, $40 million, right? That's just the going rate. 4 years, 2 years guaranteed, 2.5 years guaranteed.
If not more than that, Scott. And Brock Purdy is in line for that contract extension. He was not a first-round pick, or he has a 5-year deal with a team option entering his fourth season. Next year would be his last in San Francisco. You got to pay him now. He will be due for a hefty pay increase because, Scott, he's been playing on a rookie wage and not even a rookie first-round pick or day 2 pick, the final pick of the 2022 NFL draft. And I thought it was a for sure that Brock Purdy would see a hefty raise in whatever that next contract extension would be by the Bay. But then he missed the regular season finale with some elbow ligament issues, which of course has been an issue for Purdy dating back to the 2022 NFC Championship game. We'll see. I don't know if they would make a move to bring Sam Darnold back or try to be in the running to get Kirk Cousins, whatever it might be. With, you're right, Scott, an organization that has done a lot with not a ton of elite quarterback play, although Brock Purdy was certainly trending in to that guy. 49ers, an uneasy offseason ahead. It's not like last offseason was all that much better with all the drama around Brennan Ayuk and some that they had to figure out. So that's where the 49ers stand right now. Scott, in terms of injury news for teams that are still playing football this year, Dan Campbell in the 1 seed in the NFC, the Lions, told everybody yesterday, David Montgomery, who has been out for the final few weeks of this NFL regular season, is now expected to be back by the divisional round. Of course, Detroit earns the opening round bye this weekend. They have needed to rest up and get healthier, which is something the Lions have dealt with all year long. Significant injuries, including to Montgomery. He is now expected to be back for the divisional round, which would be not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend following. Scott will give you his thoughts on that, and then we'll talk about a very important practice in Philadelphia today for Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts on the other side of the break here on FFC.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the tickets.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're going to love it, and you're going to love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. We have spent most of our show on the offseason carousel around the NFL. And the big news, of course, that came out within the last hour, that multiple NFL teams have inquired about Bill Belichick and if he would reconsider a move that he has already made in college football and North Carolina to maybe come back to the NFL, including his former quarterback and now minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, that being Tom Brady. Any more realistic updates to that story, of course, we will provide throughout the day around the SportsGrid network. But, Scott, we're talking now about the actual teams playing football this weekend into the postseason and those that are also in the playoffs but waiting just one more week, earning the opening round bye as the 1 seed in either conference. We talked about the Detroit Lions. More than likely, as Dan Campbell said yesterday, getting their star running back David Montgomery back for that divisional round. Where things stand, Scott, that is very, very intriguing for a Lions team that will face either its former quarterback in Matthew Stafford and the Rams or its divisional mates in the Minnesota Vikings. We thought Montgomery, when he went down to the final month of the regular season, was probably out for the remainder of the year, adding on to the long laundry list of significant injuries for Detroit. To have Montgomery back by the second round of the postseason would surely be something.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it would help, but as we like to say a lot of times when a player goes out, all right, so less Montgomery means what? More Jahmyr Gibbs. So, I just as soon have Jahmyr Gibbs in there, to tell you the truth. And that's been the case for the most part. They split carries a little bit, but Montgomery and Gibbs would actually split complete series where it's basically been all Gibbs. So, and getting a bye heading into a postseason in which you're only going to have to play 2 games. So it's not like you really would be concerned about the workload for Gibbs, because then you'd even have it 2 weeks off before the Super Bowl. So, I mean, it's nice to say he'll be back, but in reality, if I'm a Lions fan, I mean, he's good, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just a little bit better, and it's you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're both really good. Yeah. So I don't think this helps the Lions' chances really anymore. Just like I don't think him not being in there hurts their chances, because, again, you get just Jahmyr Gibbs more then. That's fine.
Fair assessment, Scott, I would say, for Sonic and Knuckles as their own. But at Jahmyr Gibbs in the 3 games without Montgomery, at least 109 yards on the ground, at least 150 scrimmage yards in each and every game in all 3. He's got 6 total touchdowns in that 3-game window, including a 4 total touchdown game in the biggest of the season. A $139, 3 rushing scores on the ground, 31 receiving yards, and a receiving score on 5 grabs against the Vikings to end out the regular season. There is no doubt that Jahmyr Gibbs has filled a void left by David Montgomery and done so explosively and impressively. Scott, other injury news for a team playing this weekend. As we have shared, Jalen Hurts remains in concussion protocol, which makes today, Wednesday, the first real practice day of a full week in preparation for a Sunday game now in the postseason. Very important for the Eagles signal caller. If Hurts is to clear concussion protocol, you would think he would be back on the practice field today. It is one of the final stages of getting out of the protocol, being cleared to practice. You could argue, Scott, if you're optimistic about his status, they didn't have to clear him to practice the last few weeks, so they let him rest, and thus that's why he remains in concussion protocol. Are you at all skeptical about the status of Jalen Hurts for Sunday against the Packers?
I am. Listen, I've lived this as a Dolphin fan with Tua tags, right? I mean, this is not something you could just say, go out there, you know what, it hurts now, but I'm going to sit out a game because it's a meaningless game, but I'm going to be able to play if it was a real game. That's just not the case with concussions. You really don't have any say. If the doctors don't clear you, you're not practicing. And if you're not practicing, you're not playing on Sunday. So today is huge. If he's not out there today, Ben, that line of them being favored by 4.5, I'm telling you, I think that'll drop below 3, because the chances of him being able to be cleared by tomorrow or Friday after not being cleared for the last 3 weeks, I mean, that's a small window. I mean, so if he's not out there practicing today, and I don't think this would be a situation where the Eagles would say, well, he's cleared, but we're just not going to practice him. No, he hasn't played and practiced in a few weeks. He needs to get out there for a playoff game. So today is huge in Philadelphia.
And Scott, reports from NFL reporters around the NFL literally a minute ago, because I just typed in Jalen Hurts to Twitter to see if there was an update. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts returning to practice today ahead of wild card weekend game against the Packers. Okay. So I guess those fears have been quelled, but it was something to be a little bit anxious about. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. That does it for us today on Football Full Circle. FFC returns tomorrow, noon Eastern time on SportsGrid Radio.
Now you've done it.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.